The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I was sitting at Margaret's dining table when she looked straight at me and said to my wife, "Joyce, you need to leave him. He'll never be good enough for you." The room went dead silent. Margaret's cold blue eyes never left mine as she delivered those crushing words. She wanted me to see the hate in them. Joyce sat frozen beside me, her face pale as paper. I waited for her to defend me, to tell her mother she was wrong. But the seconds ticked by, and she said nothing. Margaret's thin lips curved into a smile that made my blood run cold. She picked up her wine glass and took a sip, acting like she hadn't just destroyed me in front of everyone. I set down my fork and looked at my wife. "Joyce?" I whispered, my voice cracking. Still nothing. The silence felt like a knife twisting in my chest. In that moment, I realized Margaret had won something I didn't even know we were fighting over. After dinner, I cornered Joyce in our bedroom. "How could you just sit there?" I asked. "Your mother basically told you to divorce me, and you said nothing." Joyce sank onto our bed, wrapping her arms around herself. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I couldn't find the words. "Your husband was being humiliated, and you couldn't find words to defend me?" She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "You don't understand. She's been saying things about you for months. Every time I visit her, every phone call. She keeps telling me you're holding me back." My heart sank. "And what do you tell her?" Joyce's silence was my answer. "Do you believe her?" I asked quietly. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she admitted. "She makes it sound so logical, so reasonable. Maybe she's right. Maybe I am settling." Those words hit harder than Margaret's public attack. My own wife was doubting our marriage because of her mother's poison. The next day, I decided to pay Margaret a surprise visit to clear the air. I found her in her kitchen, talking on the phone. She didn't notice me at first. "Don't worry," she was saying to someone. "Joyce will make the right choice when the time comes. Especially when she sees what's written in the will." She turned and saw me standing there. Her face went white, then red with anger. "I have to go," she said quickly and hung up. "What will?" I asked, stepping closer. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "That's none of your business. You're not family. I'm married to your daughter. That makes me family." She laughed harshly. "Not for much longer, if I have anything to say about it. Joyce's future depends on making smart choices. The will makes that very clear." "What do you mean her future depends on it?" Margaret smiled coldly. "Let's just say some inheritances come with conditions. Joyce knows what she needs to do." She moved toward the door. But I'd heard enough to know this wasn't just about her disliking me. This was about money. I needed answers, so I decided to visit Joyce's uncle Robert, her father's brother. They'd had some kind of falling out years ago. Robert answered the door looking surprised. He was a thin man with kind eyes, nothing like Margaret's sharp coldness. "I need to ask you about Joyce's father's will," I said directly. "Margaret keeps mentioning it, and I think there's something I don't know." Robert's face darkened. He looked around nervously, then invited me inside. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "If Margaret finds out." "Finds out what?" "Robert, please. She's trying to destroy my marriage, and she keeps talking about some will." Robert sat down heavily. "There are things about that will that Margaret doesn't want anyone to know. Dark secrets that could change everything." He looked at me with sad eyes. "Your marriage might not be the only thing at stake here. Margaret has been lying to Joyce for years." He wouldn't say more, but I could see the fear in his eyes. Whatever was in that will, it was big enough to scare him. A week later, Joyce asked me to help clean out her father's old study. Margaret wanted to turn it into a guest room. I was going through his desk when I found something strange. One of the drawers seemed shorter than it should be. I pulled it out completely and found a hidden compartment. Inside was a sealed envelope with Joyce's name written on it. My hands shook as I held it. This looked important, maybe even connected to the will Robert had mentioned. I was about to call Joyce when I heard footsteps. "What are you doing?" Margaret's voice was sharp and angry. She stood in the doorway, staring at the envelope. "I found this hidden in the desk. It's addressed to Joyce." Margaret moved faster than I'd ever seen her move. She snatched the envelope from my hands. "That's private," she snapped, clutching it to her chest. "It's addressed to Joyce. She should read it. Joyce doesn't need to see this. It would only upset her." Margaret's voice was shaking. "Some things are better left buried." She left the room, taking the letter with her. But I'd seen the panic in her eyes. That night, Joyce seemed distant and troubled. Finally, I turned off the TV and faced her. "What's wrong?" I asked. She sighed deeply. "I had lunch with my mother today. She's really worried about us, about our future together." My stomach clenched. "What did she say now?" "She thinks I'm making a mistake staying with you. She says if I choose you over other options, I could lose everything that matters." Joyce looked at me with tears in her eyes. "And what do you think?" "I love you," she said quickly. "But what if she's right? What if choosing you means giving up my family, my inheritance, everything I've ever known?" I took her hands in mine. "Joyce, your mother is manipulating you. She's using fear to control your choices." "Maybe. But what if she's not? What if staying with you really will cost me everything?" She pulled her hands away. "I keep thinking about what my life could be like if I made different choices." Margaret was winning. She was buying Joyce's loyalty with threats and promises, and I was losing my wife piece by piece. The next morning, our neighbor Mrs. Grant called me over. She looked nervous, constantly glancing toward Margaret's house. "I need to tell you something," she whispered. "About Margaret and what she's planning." Mrs. Grant pulled me farther from Margaret's house. "Last month, I was in my garden when I heard her on the phone. She was talking about how to disinherit Joyce if she stayed married to you." My blood went cold. Disinherit her? She was laughing about it, saying Joyce had no idea what the real conditions were. She said something about changing documents and making sure Joyce would have to choose between you and her inheritance. "Did you hear anything else?" She mentioned something about a lawyer, about making sure the will was modified. She kept saying Joyce would thank her later, once she realized what she'd saved her from. Mrs. Grant touched my arm. "That woman is dangerous. She's been planning this for a long time." I walked home with my mind spinning. Margaret wasn't just trying to break up my marriage for personal reasons. She was manipulating Joyce's inheritance to force her to leave me. 2 weeks later, Margaret invited the whole extended family for Sunday dinner. I didn't want to go, but Joyce insisted. During dinner, Margaret started her attack. "Santoro, remind everyone what you do for work again," she asked sweetly. "I'm a mechanic," I replied. "A mechanic," she repeated, like the word tasted bad. "And Joyce has a master's degree in business. Don't you think that's unbalanced?" The whole table went quiet. "I think honest work is nothing to be ashamed of," I said. Margaret laughed. "Honest, yes. But hardly ambitious. Joyce could have married a doctor, a lawyer, someone who could give her the life she deserves. What kind of future can you really offer her?" Margaret continued. "A house with a mortgage you'll spend 30 years paying off." I felt my face burning with embarrassment and anger. Still, Joyce said nothing to defend me. I stood up slowly. "You're right, Margaret. I can't offer Joyce a mansion or expensive trips. But I can offer her love, respect, and loyalty. Things money can't buy. I walked out, leaving everyone staring. The next day, Joyce's younger brother Jan showed up at my work. He looked nervous, constantly checking over his shoulder. "We need to talk," he said. "Meet me at Games's diner tonight at 8. Come alone, and don't tell Joyce." That evening, I found Jan in a back booth, hunched over coffee. "I can't take it anymore," he said. "Watching what my mother is doing to you and Joyce is making me sick." "What do you mean?" "She's been planning this for months. She controls everything in our family, every decision, every relationship. When Joyce married you, it was the first time anyone had defied her. So she decided to destroy my marriage?" Jan nodded grimly. "But it's worse than that. She's been lying about Dad's will. There are conditions in there that she's never told Joyce about." My heart started racing. "What kind of conditions?" "I can't tell you everything yet. It's too dangerous. But that will contain something that Margaret would kill to keep secret." He slid a piece of paper across the table. "This is the address of Dad's old safe deposit box. Robert might have access to it." The next morning, I called Robert and told him what Jan had said. He agreed to meet me at the bank. "I haven't been to that box since my brother died," Robert admitted as we walked toward the bank. Margaret claimed she handled everything. The bank manager led us to the safe deposit box room. Robert's hands shook as he used his key. Inside were several documents, but one stood out, a sealed envelope marked, "Original Will." "This isn't the will that was read after the funeral," Robert said, his face pale. We opened it carefully. As I read, my mouth fell open. According to this will, Joyce's father had left specific instructions that were completely different from what Margaret had told everyone. "She lied," Robert whispered. "She's been lying about everything." The will contained conditions, but not the ones Margaret had described. There was a clause that specifically protected Joyce's inheritance if she married for love. And there was something else, a condition that would strip Margaret of her inheritance if she tried to manipulate Joyce's marriage choices. "We need to get this to a lawyer," I said. "Margaret has been committing fraud." Robert nodded, but his eyes were filled with fear. That evening, I sat Joyce down and tried to explain what I'd discovered. "Your mother has been lying to you about your father's will," I said gently. Joyce's face went white. "What are you talking about?" "She's been manipulating you, making you think you have to choose between me and your inheritance. But that's not what your father wanted. That's impossible. She showed me the will herself." "Did you read the original, or did she just tell you what it said?" Joyce was quiet, thinking. She summarized it for me. Said the legal language was too complicated. "Joyce, your father wanted you to marry for love. He put protections in place to make sure no one could pressure you." Before Joyce could respond, we heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, I saw Margaret marching toward our front door, her face twisted with rage. "She knows," Joyce whispered. Margaret didn't bother knocking. She burst into our living room like an avenging angel. "What lies has he been filling your head with now?" she demanded, pointing at me. "They're not lies, Mother," Joyce said quietly. "Are they?" Margaret's confident mask slipped, and I saw pure panic in her eyes. Margaret's face cycled through several emotions before settling on cold fury. "I don't know what garbage you think you've discovered, but you're playing with fire." "We found the real will, Margaret," I said. "We know what Joyce's father actually wrote." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "You found nothing. The will that was probated is the only one that counts legally." "The will that was probated was a fraud," I shot back. Margaret's composure finally cracked. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, let me tell you something. When that will is read publicly, you'll understand why Joyce should have left you months ago. Joyce looked confused. What will reading? I thought Dad's estate was already settled. Margaret's eyes glittered with malice. Oh, sweetheart, there's going to be another reading. A final reading that includes some additional documents your father left. She turned back to me. You have no idea what you're up against. When that day comes, Joyce will see exactly what choosing you costs her. And then she'll hate you for making her lose everything. With that threat hanging in the air, she stormed out. Joyce sank onto the couch. What is she talking about? I sat beside her, my mind racing. Margaret was planning something big. 3 days later, we received an official notice. Joyce's father's will was being reread due to newly discovered documentation. The reading was scheduled for Friday at Brennan and Associates. I don't understand, Joyce said, staring at the letter. Why now? It's been 2 years since Dad died. I had a sinking feeling Margaret was making her final move. She'd let us discover the real will because she had something even bigger planned. Joyce barely spoke to me the days leading up to the reading. Margaret called her constantly, whispering reassurances that everything would work out if Joyce just trusted her. Robert called me the night before. I'm scared, he admitted. Margaret looked too confident today. Like she knows something we don't. What could she possibly have that would trump the original will? I don't know, but my brother was a careful man. If he hid one document, he might have hidden others. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Margaret's triumphant smile. The morning of the reading, Joyce was quiet and pale. Whatever happens today, she said, I want you to know that I love you. But I'm terrified. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, I promised. But as we pulled into the parking lot, I wondered if I was about to lose everything. We filed into the lawyer's conference room. Margaret sat across from us with her own attorney. Jan was there, looking nervous. Robert sat in the back. Just before the lawyer began, Robert slipped me a folded piece of paper. I opened it carefully. It was a photocopy with a note in Robert's handwriting. Found this in my brother's bedroom safe. Margaret doesn't know it exists. The page made my heart race. It was an amendment to the will, dated 1 week before Joyce's father died. In his own handwriting, he had added, if my wife Margaret attempts to manipulate my daughter Joyce's marriage choices in any way, she forfeits all claims to my estate. But there was more. Joyce's inheritance is not conditional on her marriage choices. Any family member who attempts to use this inheritance as leverage will be immediately disinherited. I looked across at Margaret, who sat smugly, completely unaware that I held the key to her destruction. The lawyer began. We're here today because new evidence has come to light. Mrs. Margaret has presented documents that she claims supersede the previously probated will. Margaret smiled triumphantly. But I had a surprise of my own. The handwritten amendment in my pocket was about to change everything. Joyce squeezed my hand under the table. Whatever happens, she whispered, I need you to know something. I've been such a fool. My mother has been manipulating me for months, and I let her. Joyce, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Her voice was stronger now. She convinced me that loving you was a weakness. But the truth is, you're the best thing that ever happened to me. Across the table, Margaret's smile faltered. I've spent weeks torn between my love for you and my fear of losing my family's approval, Joyce continued. But I realize now that my mother doesn't want what's best for me. She wants control. Margaret's face was getting red. Joyce, darling, you're upset. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying, Mother. You've been lying to me about Dad's will, haven't you? The lawyer paused in his reading, sensing the tension. That's ridiculous, Margaret snapped. Everything I've done has been to protect you. I decided it was time. I stood up and pulled out the amendment Robert had given me. Actually, Margaret, I think it's time everyone learned the truth about your lies. The lawyer took the document and examined it carefully. His eyebrows rose as he read. This appears to be a handwritten amendment to the will, dated 1 week before the deceased's death, he announced. It's signed and witnessed properly. Margaret's face went from red to pale instantly. That's impossible. There was no amendment. Actually, there was, Robert said, standing up. My brother gave me a copy before he died. He was worried about what might happen to Joyce. The lawyer read the amendment aloud. If my wife Margaret attempts to manipulate my daughter Joyce's marriage choices in any way, she forfeits all claims to my estate. The room erupted. Margaret jumped to her feet, screaming, "That's a forgery." But the lawyer wasn't finished. The amendment goes on to say that Joyce's inheritance is not conditional on her marriage choices, and any family member who attempts to use the inheritance as leverage will be disinherited. Joyce gasped. So everything you told me was a lie? Margaret was frantically conferring with her attorney, but I could see the panic in her eyes. This is all lies, she screamed. Santoro put Robert up to this. But her denials were getting more desperate, and everyone could see the truth written on her face. The lawyer set down the amendment and picked up another document. I'm afraid there's more, Mrs. Margaret. Your late husband also left sealed letters documenting his concerns about your behavior. Margaret's face went completely white. Sealed letters? Letters describing specific incidents where you attempted to control Joyce's relationships, dating back to her college years. The lawyer opened one of the letters. Margaret has consistently tried to sabotage Joyce's relationships with men she deems beneath our family status. She has lied to Joyce about my wishes and has threatened to disinherit her multiple times. Joyce started crying quietly. The lawyer continued, therefore, I am amending my will to include the following condition: Margaret will only inherit from my estate if she can provide documented proof that she has supported Joyce's marriage and happiness. The silence was deafening. Margaret stood frozen. Furthermore, if evidence exists that she has attempted to manipulate Joyce's inheritance for her own purposes, she will receive nothing from my estate. I watched Margaret's world crumble in real time. All her scheming had been documented by her own husband. This is impossible, she whispered. The lawyer looked directly at her. Mrs. Margaret, can you provide proof that you have supported your daughter's marriage? Lawyer. I demand you investigate these documents. This is fraud. Her attorney tried to calm her down, but she was beyond reason. My husband was mentally ill when he wrote that. The lawyer shook his head. Mrs. Margaret, your husband had a complete mental health evaluation just 1 month before his death. He was declared fully competent. Margaret turned to Joyce with desperation. Joyce, sweetheart, you have to believe me. Your father never would have written those things. But Joyce was looking at her mother with new eyes. Were you protecting me when you told everyone my husband wasn't good enough? Were you protecting me when you threatened to disinherit me? I was trying to save you from a life of mediocrity. No, Joyce said firmly. You were trying to control me. Just like you've controlled everyone in this family for years. Margaret's face twisted with rage. Fine. If you want to throw your life away on him, go ahead. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mrs. Margaret, according to your husband's amended will, your attempts to manipulate Joyce's marriage have cost you your entire inheritance. Joyce stood up slowly, her hands shaking but her voice steady. Mother, for the first time in my life, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. Margaret stopped her ranting and stared at her daughter. You have spent my entire life trying to control me. My friendships, my career choices, my husband, nothing was ever good enough unless you approved it. Joyce's voice grew stronger. But I'm done being your puppet. Joyce, please. No. Let me finish. Joyce looked directly at her mother. Santoro is a good man. He works hard, he treats me with respect, and he loves me for who I am. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. After months of doubt, Joyce was finally standing up for us. I choose Santoro, she continued. Not because of money or inheritance or family approval. I choose him because he's my partner, my best friend, and the man I want to spend my life with. Margaret's face crumpled. You're making a terrible mistake. That inheritance could have given you security. The only thing I needed freedom from was you, Joyce said quietly. Jan stepped forward. Mom, it's over. Joyce has made her choice, and Dad made his. You lost because of your own actions. Margaret looked around the room, seeing nothing but disappointed faces. The family she tried so hard to control was slipping away. I stood up and faced Margaret for what I knew would be the last time. You're right about one thing, I said calmly. We have chosen sides. We've chosen honesty over manipulation, love over control, and respect over fear. Margaret glared at me with pure hatred. You think you've won, don't you? This was never about winning or losing, I replied. This was about the truth. And the truth is that everything you've said and done has been witnessed by people who care about Joyce. I gestured around the room. Mrs. Grant heard you planning to disinherit Joyce. Jan watched you manipulate her for years. Robert knew about the lies. Your own husband documented your behavior. Margaret's lawyer whispered something in her ear, but she pushed him away. All of your cruel words, all of your schemes, they've backfired completely, I continued. Your own greed has cost you everything you were trying to protect. The lawyer nodded. The evidence is overwhelming. Mrs. Margaret, you have not only lost your inheritance but have also provided legal grounds for a restraining order. Margaret's composure finally shattered. This isn't over, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I'll fight this. I'll appeal. You'll lose, Jan said quietly. Mom, Dad knew exactly what kind of person you were. Margaret looked at her son with shock and betrayal. Margaret tried one last desperate play. She fell into a chair and started crying dramatically. How can you all turn against me like this? I sacrificed everything for this family. But Jan wasn't buying it anymore. What dreams did you give up, Mom? You've controlled everyone around you your entire life. That was your dream. Robert stepped forward. Margaret, I stayed quiet for years because you were my brother's wife. But I can't watch you destroy Joyce's happiness anymore. You all ganged up against me. Margaret wailed. No, Robert said firmly. This is consequences. My brother saw what you were doing to Joyce, and he tried to protect her. The lawyer pulled out another folder. Your husband also left statements from several family friends and neighbors who witnessed your attempts to control Joyce's relationships over the years. Margaret's face went pale. What statements? Mrs. Wilson documented the time you told Joyce's college boyfriend that the family disapproved of him. Mr. Peterson witnessed you intercepting Joyce's mail. Mrs. Grant has provided a sworn statement about the conversation she overheard. Each revelation hit Margaret like a physical blow. Her web of lies was being unraveled thread by thread. Your husband was very thorough, the lawyer continued. He wanted to make sure Joyce would be protected from any attempts to control her life after his death. Margaret looked around the room one final time, seeing only disappointed faces. The empire of control she'd built was crumbling. The lawyer cleared his throat and began reading the final disposition. Given the evidence of manipulation and the conditions set forth in the amended will, I hereby declare that Joyce inherits her father's entire estate without any conditions regarding her marriage. Joyce gasped, covering her mouth with her hands. Margaret, having violated the terms of the will through documented attempts to manipulate Joyce's marriage choices, inherits nothing from the estate. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Margaret sat in stunned silence as the reality hit her. She had lost everything. "This can't be happening," she whispered. But it was very real. The lawyer handed Joyce a folder containing all the legal documents. "Congratulations, Mrs. Joyce. Your father wanted to make sure you would always be free to choose your own path." Margaret stood up shakily. "Joyce, please. You can't let them do this to me. I'm your mother. I need that money to live." Joyce looked at her mother with sadness and steel in her eyes. "You should have thought about that before you tried to destroy my marriage. I was protecting you." "No, you were protecting yourself. You wanted to control my life so you could control Dad's money." Margaret turned to Jan desperately. "Son, surely you understand." "I understand that you got exactly what you deserved," Jan said coldly. Margaret's screams of protest echoed through the law office as security was called to escort her out. News of Margaret's downfall spread through their small town like wildfire. Within days, everyone knew about the will reading and Margaret's manipulation. The woman who had once been respected was now the subject of whispered conversations. At the post office, the clerk mentioned that Margaret had been asking about forwarding addresses for rental properties in other towns. "I think she's planning to leave," he said. Joyce seemed lighter somehow, like a weight had been lifted. "I keep waiting for her to call and try to guilt me," she admitted one evening. "But the silence is actually peaceful." Jan stopped by regularly. "I should have stood up to her years ago," he said during one visit. "I'm sorry I let her put you through all that." "You helped when it mattered most," I told him. Even Robert seemed relieved. "Your marriage gave Joyce the strength to break free," he said. "My brother would be proud. The town's opinion of me changed too. The man who had once been seen as not good enough was now viewed as the husband who had helped Joyce escape her mother's control. But the best vindication was seeing Joyce smile again, really smile, without her mother's disapproval hanging over her. Over the following weeks, Joyce and I worked hard to rebuild our marriage. The months of manipulation had left scars, and healing took time. "I'm so sorry," Joyce said one evening as we sat on our porch. "I should have defended you from the beginning. I should have seen what she was doing." I took her hand. "Your mother is a master manipulator. She spent years conditioning you to doubt yourself. You can't blame yourself for falling victim to that. But I'm your wife. I should have trusted you over her. You were in an impossible situation. She was using your love for your family against you." I squeezed her hand. "What matters is that you found the strength to break free." Joyce leaned against my shoulder. "I keep thinking about all the times she made me feel guilty for choosing you. And now? Now I know the only mistake would have been listening to her." She looked up at me. "I love you, Santoro. Not because of money or status. I love you because you're kind and honest and because you see the best in me." We talked for hours that night, about everything that had happened and everything we wanted for our future. For the first time in months, we were completely honest with each other. The inheritance gave Joyce financial security, but more importantly, it gave her freedom, freedom from her mother's control and freedom to live life on her own terms. 3 months later, as Joyce and I were going through her father's papers, we found one final surprise. Hidden in an old book was another sealed envelope, this one addressed to me. With shaking hands, I opened it and read. "Santoro, if you're reading this, it means Margaret's greed has finally been exposed. I watched you with my daughter, and I saw something in your eyes that I never saw in any of her other suitors, genuine love. I know Margaret will try to destroy your marriage. She has always believed that love is weakness and that money is the only thing that matters. But I have left protections in place to make sure Joyce can choose love over manipulation. Take care of my daughter, Santoro. Love her, protect her, and help her see that she deserves happiness more than approval. Margaret will eventually reveal her true nature. When she does, stand strong. Thank you for loving my daughter the way she deserves to be loved. I showed the letter to Joyce, and she cried as she read it. He knew, she whispered. He knew what she would try to do, and he protected us. That letter was the final piece of healing we needed. Joyce's father had not only protected her inheritance but had given his blessing to our love. Today, Joyce and I are stronger than ever. Margaret left town and hasn't contacted us since. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was freedom, validation, and proof that love really can triumph over greed and manipulation.